Test. Okay. Hello. Test. Can everyone? Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for coming. I am Katrina Dalby, and on behalf of the PTO leadership team, I want to welcome you guys tonight. This is our second, it's kind of becoming an annual event, panel discussion where we're going to talk about our students and their mental health and well-being. And we have brought in some panelists that are amazing and experts in this area and are going to share with us. Before we get to the panel, I just want to go over very briefly PTO items that we want you guys to be aware of. Like I said, I'm Katrina, myself, and Becky Lewis. We are the co-chairs this school year for the elementary PTO. We have Allison Hughes is our finance chair. Okay, we have Gretchen and Julie, who are kind of co-vice chairs, and Tabitha, who is our communications chair. Did I leave anyone out? No. So questions about the PTO, please come and talk to us and share with your friends involved in the PTO. If they have questions, we would love to hear from you. You can always find our information in the weekly newsletter that comes from Miss Elam. You can see information that we post on our Facebook page, through our website, and sometimes like some of our events are in the MRH school newsletter, which we appreciate that support as well. If you need any information about upcoming events, on your table is a calendar that I believe Gretchen put together for the fall semester. This is just a great resource for you guys to know what is coming up, not just for the PTO, but for the school as well. A few things like this Saturday, we're having a soccer game with the middle school as a fundraiser to see the city soccer team. What's that, Gretchen? Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Copy that was previously posted online as slightly edited. Wow, this is going to get interesting. So please stay informed through our website, through the Facebook page, and through the newsletters. It will always have the correct, up-to-date information. Like I said, we have a soccer game this Sunday, fall parties at the end of October. Special Friends Day, also known as Grand Friends Day, is in November, along with our book fair. Those dates are to be determined, but we will send out that information as soon as it's available. And if you are interested in volunteering or signing up for any of these events, there's some QR codes in the back, along with snacks, beverages, and our panelists have all brought some of their brochures, business cards with information, and we welcome you guys to go and check that out if you need to leave early or on your way out. Allison is going to give us a very budget.
Okay, so obviously to do the wonderful things we want to do for the PTO, we do need money for that. And we do carry money over from the previous year, but also just coming up some fundraisers. And these are super easy ways that you can get involved with the PTO and get a little benefit out of it. Like, who doesn't love pizza? So we have both Pizza Champ nights, which are every second Wednesday. Pizza Champ's a really generous partner with us. When we also have our Bobo's Pizza fundraiser, which will come up in October. So just keep an eye out for that. We also will be looking to get donations for class parties. So if you are not able to come to volunteer for a class party, or if you just want to make sure that maybe other kids in the class are covered, you can make a donation. That will be up on our site soon. We also do fundraising for teacher appreciation in May, as well as our school supply fundraiser, which just wrapped. So that will come back up though at the end of the school year. And then another new thing for this year that we're doing fundraisers is with City 2, where we did this back in June, and we're doing one this Sunday. So if you still want to purchase tickets, they are available and they're in your family newsletter. So look for that. And things that we're going to be spending money on this year, snacks for map testing, new teacher classroom grants. Every new teacher can apply for a $50 grant for their classroom. We also help stock the teacher snack cart, provide meals for parent-teacher conferences, appreciation week. We also look out for our teachers before spring break and winter break because we know they're looking forward to that break as well. And we also provide everything the classrooms need for class parties. So like the fall party coming up, we're going to bring in the Mad Science show that we brought for our winter party last year. So the kids will get to go do that, and they get to have snacks, drinks, all that in their classrooms. We also do a little bit of appreciation for the students right before spring break. And then we also provide support for field trips. We also provide snow cones for field day and special friends day. So if you have any questions about how much something costs or how you can get involved, or if you want to donate, we're always open for that. Just come find me.
Okay, so we're gonna leave the PTO portion. We're gonna start our panel discussion for tonight. I had the great privilege of asking these individuals up here, and I think you will learn why we invited them up. So I would like to, Stephen, there's a microphone right behind you. I would love for you guys to share who you are, what you do, a little bit of your training, your experience, maybe why you work with the people that you work with. So thank you.
I see a light. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, we're good. Hello, I'm Steve Dalby. I am not in any way connected to that person over there. I'm just kidding. They're going to be cutting in and out tonight, I'm sure of it. I currently work at Mercy Hospital at the Edgewood location doing adolescent and adult IOP, in intensive outpatient program. What that is just basically people will usually come from patient where they've either had some kind of near suicide attempt or really in an unstable place, not doing okay. They stay in inpatient till they're stabilized and safe. And then we're usually kind of like a step down level from that. And it's like 3 days a week, 3 hours a day, usually for about 12 weeks or so, something like that. About my background, this is going to bother me. I was in the Marine Corps after high school, and then I went to college. I did youth ministry and worked with middle and high school students after graduating from college. And in the meantime, while working full time, went and got my counseling license and degree, and worked in hospice. I did that for about 4 years. Did end of life care, grief support, grief groups, and then I worked at Mercy Virtual with the geriatric population and chronically ill people as on a team of providers and clinicians, and we do everything virtually. And it was an amazing experience. Then the pandemic hit. Then we lost our jobs. Then I worked at SSM doing something similar, and now I'm back at Mercy again with I just said. So there you go. I'm going to pass the mic now.
Thank you. Hi there. I'm Amanda Ratz. If some of you recognize my high-pitched voice or my face, I was the school counselor at MRH ECC from 2016 to 2022, and it was sure an honor to be there. Previously, right before that, I was working with our alternative education students at the high school level, and I was contracted in with Preferred Family Health Care, similar to a youth in need that's contracted into the school setting. And I was lucky enough to be hired onto the district 10 months later. So I got to see our children at the end of their high school career and what they were facing. And then I got to go all the way down to the itty bitties in K-2 to see what they were facing, which was really a precious opportunity for me because I'm really passionate about prevention and early intervention, especially in the capacity of mental health. And it comes from a place of wanting to prevent suicide and anxiety and depression in children. So I got to go in classrooms as a school counselor and teach behavioral tools to help children fill up their toolbox with positive coping skills that I knew they would need as an adult. And really, as I did my work year to year, I saw their needs getting higher and higher in that capacity, and they needed more tools and more tools in their toolbox. So I worked through the pandemic, and in 2022, I decided I got to do a lot of, probably shouldn't advertise this, but I did or Vince Estrada said I got to do a lot more clinical work than a lot of the other counselors in the district, mainly because I didn't have to do anything with scheduling or anything like that. So I got to spend a lot of my time in the field, face to face with kids and families. And that really was clinical work, but I had to kind of keep my private practice license on the side and just use my school counseling hat. But I got to see every year how our programming was getting better and more intentional and more responsive and more specific. And I saw the kids getting worse. So I kept asking myself, what's going on? What are we doing? What can we be doing more of? But I saw this trend of kids suffering more at really young ages, at 5 and 6 years old. So I decided to make a shift into private practice and have a smaller caseload where I could see even more change. And I get to see a lot of people from the MRH community out in the real world in private practice these days. So I do have a group that I'm starting in 2 weeks. I just want you to know about it if this is something you're interested in. I have flyers back there. It's a really phenomenal group, and I'm just getting it out to the community. But it's to prevent anxiety and depression and to leave kids 6 weeks later with many more tools than they came in with. So great to be with you guys tonight.
Hello, my name is Melissa Durker, and I started my social work career working for the Department of Social Services for Children's Division, and worked with intact families so that their kids could stay in their care, and then worked with kids in foster care, and then moved into the adoptions unit because I'm also adopted, so that was near and dear to my heart, and worked with waiting families and worked with the system of getting kids adopted. After I got pregnant with twins, the state does not pay enough money. So I left and worked for a nonprofit where I ran all of their youth support groups and summer camps and wrote home studies and did all of their intake and was part-time. So I did all of that. It's now called Family Forward, and loved every bit of that. After I started working with a lot of groups, I experienced my own re-traumatization and realized that I needed to find a way to work through that, to continue working in the field of trauma. So I went to yoga teacher training to just see if movement would work, because we know that trauma is stored in our bodies, and as we're feeling stuck, we may not have the words, but we can move. And that was a really healing process for me. And so I went back and just told them I have to leave and I have to start my own journey and my own business. And so I own Complete Harmony here in Maplewood. We're on Greenwood. We support vulnerable and queer youth in their journey of embodied movement and mindfulness. We're expanding our mission a little bit because over the past year, a lot of queer youth and families came looking for additional support outside of the embodied movement and mindfulness world. As a queer person myself, and the mother of a trans daughter, this felt really important to me. And so we're looking at expanding into more of a third space for youth while still offering trauma-informed programming and movement and mindfulness. But you may have heard of our Pride and Joy event that took place at Living Room. We had a queer clothing swap, and we do like a queer dance and different things like that for families to come together and youth to come together. So we're kind of expanding. So that's me.
Hi, y'all. I'm Natalie Corral, and I am an art therapist and an LPC. I am currently in private practice in Richmond Heights on Big Bend. There's a little house with a peach door. If you want to cross from Mr. Wizards is where we are. About me. Let's see. What else? I work with teens and young adults, mostly teens who are struggling with anxiety, depression, mostly related to trauma. I also have a group coming up in a couple of weeks for my teens, and have some flyers back there too if you all want to check that out. I have been in private practice for the last 5 years, but previously I had worked in an alternative school for kids who had some behavioral issues, facility, domestic violence shelter, worked at the county jail for a little bit, substance abuse. And yeah, I'm excited to be here.
I'm going to pass the hopefully working mic to Miss Elam. She is going to just ask questions that were pre-submitted from members in our community. Some are specific to each of you, and you guys know about that. And then there's just some general questions. And then if we have time, we'll open up the floor to additional questions. So thank you, Miss Elam.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I am so excited about this event tonight. Not only about us gathering together because it helps us to have a sense of community, but also learning different strategies and ways that we all can take and put in our toolbox in order to support our learners, and for some of this, even ourselves. So I'm really excited about this opportunity. We have some questions, and with these questions, some of them are catered towards specific individuals, and then others is just open to the panel. All right. So I'll start with you, Steve. All right. So can you explain some helpful ways to support a student with ADHD? Can you also explain of medication and how they support a student?
All right. Well, obviously, ADHD is one of those things that can be challenging to know how to help support our children, students. I think depending on your own experience and understanding of ADHD, you may not even realize that that is what you may be dealing with your students or with your children, and you just know that it's really stressful and they're all over the place, and they don't seem. Johnny over here in our neighbor's family does what their parents ask them to do when they ask him to, but my little Johnny doesn't. But there's all different kinds of things. There's a range of symptoms. There's a range of severity. There can be other coexisting things going on, like anxiety or depression. There could be learning disabilities. It could be some, it could be on the spectrum. All different kinds of things. And so, one piece would be sort of trying to. And that's one of my other questions. Probably is going to be coming up, but you're going to want to try to find the people in your circles that have experience with that in their family, maybe your pediatrician, maybe the school, the special school district. I'll get more into that in my next question, but there's lots of good resources online these days. But basic things of just medication is an important part of that process oftentimes, and usually it's sort of a first line of defense kind of thing that can then help get more mileage, if you will, out of some of the other steps. But things like trying to have as consistent of a routine as you can, getting enough sleep at night, consistent bedtime and wake schedule. However, with ADHD, sometimes you have little night owls, or they'll wake up and they're just awake. And that can be really challenging too, because you're asleep or really sleepy. Try to help them stay away from empty calories and the not great kinds of food when possible. And just trying to help them recognize when they're starting to feel especially wiggly or especially distracted. Trying to help them practice some things like mindfulness, maybe high protein diet. And other than that, I'd say kind of, again, it's work trying to establish support for yourself so you can learn about it. I'm trying to think here. Am I answering if you already know there's an ADHD diagnosis or if you haven't found out if there is one yet? And I'm answering both at the same time. So that's not very helpful maybe. But trying to determine if there is ADHD going on, getting a diagnosis is important. And if you've already got that going on, then trying to take medication consistently and trying to help set up systems and reminders and trying to have patience yourself, trying to meet them where they are and care for yourself as well in the process so that you're better equipped to help them have that non-anxious presence and to not stir things up or get into those little elbowing matches of challenge.
Thank you. All right. Amanda, what advice would you give to parents if they are struggling with their own anxiety regarding being a parent and supporting their child? What can parents do to not pass along their own fears and struggles to their child?
All right. Well, I'm here. I am soft spoken. And we'll hope it comes back on. So it's a two-part question. What advice would you give parents if they're struggling within their own anxiety regarding being a parent and supporting their child? I'm a big, firm believer on taking, Steve mentioned at the end of what he shared, but taking really good care of yourself, because we know as parents it's a really demanding job in a good way, but it demands a lot of us along the way. Just when we think we have something figured out, something pops up that we've never faced with our oldest child, and we have to figure out something new. So if we're not taking good care of ourselves, it's hard to take good care of our children. So, getting in touch with your inner dialogue and realizing, are you your best cheerleader or are you your worst critic? Because we know we can be both of those. And most times when I work with adults and children, we're more of our worst critic. So really being intentional about, they tell us to go to the gym and make more healthy decisions than we do unhealthy decisions for our body. But I am a firm believer in having daily intention with your mental health. Otherwise, it just slips. I think of it like a seesaw. When we're putting good things into our brain, we're feeling good. When we're putting bad things into our brain, we're feeling bad. It's pretty simple. But as a parent, we have to keep our bucket full. And I bet you all in the room could understand that it's hard to do that. It takes a lot of work. I have two little ones at the ECC myself and a 1-year-old. So I know it's a lot of hard work. So take care of yourself and don't ever forget your village. I had to rely heavily on my village about 1.5 years ago, and I wouldn't have made it without my village at that time. I had a traumatic pregnancy and birth with my last baby, and the community of MRH really kind of saved me, to be honest. I had a really good following and really good support even when I left the district, and I needed that. And so we all walk in that journey where we need that too, and we should never be ashamed to ask for help, even if it means getting together and having a play date in the park and just feeling vulnerable enough and comfortable enough with another mom friend or dad friend to say, hey, I'm going through this. I'm worried about my child developmentally, and just knowing that they're also going through their own challenges alongside of you, that it's not just you and you're never alone. I can also say that the district is full of good resources. I sat on hundreds and hundreds of meetings throughout my 7 years in the district. And when I tell you, we came together as teams proactively from our side to try to help kids socially, emotionally, academically. And the amount of phenomenal ideas that came out of these teachers' brains and their social emotional supports brains were phenomenal. So if you have a question, be specific, ask in your parent teacher conferences, reach out to the school counselor, the social worker. If you need support, don't feel like you can't ask, because there's so many good resources we can tap into, and just don't leave them on the table. The second part of that question is, how do we not have it kind of relay onto our kids? Because we know if we have an anxious brain and our tone's anxious and our words are anxious, I've seen it happen with kids as a school counselor, and parents try the best with the tools they have. But if you know you're anxious, just pay attention to your tone, pay attention to what your body needs to feel regulated. The goal in my practice is to help people of all ages regulate their nervous system. So the more regulated we can be as parents, the better we'll be able to help teach our children how to regulate. If we don't know how to regulate, we're going to have a really hard time helping our children regulate. So what are some things we can do? I just wanted to share some quick ideas. They're not anything you've never heard of before, but they really do work. Moving your body regularly. I like to know the why behind things, and that helps your body metabolize cortisol. So we know that cortisol and adrenaline, when pumped through our body when our stress is high, and all of us after the pandemic have all been through chronic stress. So making sure you're taking care of yourself, eating a well-balanced diet that's going to help your brain make the best decisions as a parent, and eating, all the colors of the rainbow to make sure, taking in good foods so that you can feel nourished to take good care of your kids, because the days are long, but the years are short, right? Finding a short meditation can be so powerful. Sometimes this seems like, oh, I'm not a meditator, but if you can find a 3 to 5 minute free YouTube video, that speaks to you, it can really kind of take you to a better place to start your morning and even end your day. And just like a good simple breathing technique, I teach the 4-3-8 breath. So you take 4-second breath in, hold your breath for 3 seconds, and breathe out for 8. And I think the most powerful part is breathing out twice as long as you're breathing in. And if you do that for 2 minutes, they almost say it's seems like you took some medicine. You can really like completely reset your nervous system in 2 minutes. So there's a lot of tools to try, but just find what works for you. Keep it simple and don't feel like you have to spend an hour a day doing it. Just take care of yourself.
Thank you. All right. Now, the next question is for Melissa. What are some good mindfulness techniques that parents can use at home or share with their children to help them calm down or work through an issue?
Yeah, I think the first thing to talk about with mindfulness is the definition of mindfulness. And, we hear mindfulness all the time right now. It's kind of a buzzword. But mindfulness is just being present here and now with kindness and curiosity. That's all it is. And so sometimes I'll have kids come in and say, we're not going to do that laying down thing where we have to like imagine clouds, right? Sometimes that works for people and sometimes it doesn't. But some really great tools, especially if your kiddo is already dysregulated and you're dysregulated, are go for a walk, do a 5 senses meditation, which means that you're sitting there together, you're looking for things that see, you can smell, you can touch, you can hear, you can taste. Blowing bubbles. That's a great way to co-regulate together. Playing drums or banging on something. Coloring. These things are all making us be present in the moment, doing things that are kind of to ourselves, that allow us to be curious. We're not thinking fast, and we're not thinking anything's happening. I think all the tools that you want to practice when you're not dysregulated too. The toolbox, you have to be able to like the microphone so that you can pull them out. And I think a lot of parents expect, well, my kids did this, they should know what to do when they're dysregulated, they're mad, they should know to grab the bubbles. That's not how it works. The front part of our brain isn't working at that moment where we can rationally think of things, and we're just in survival mode at that moment. And so doing it with your kids helps you regulate and helps them regulate. And then later on allows you to have that conversation, not in that moment, but later on, once you have both found some footing.
Thank you, Melissa. So, Natalie, what type of activities would you recommend for helping support a student struggling with anxiety?
So I was thinking about this, how the anxiety shows up. So if it's anxiety that's externalized, so you're going to see, that's where like you see some behaviors, right? Like you're going to see physically that they're anxious. They might be moving a lot. They might be crying, right? Like something outside of us, right? And then there's also the internal anxiety, which I like is I think doesn't get enough attention that it should, because it's something that's kind of hidden but powerful. So what I mean by that is think like have it all together class, or they're quiet, or that kind of thing. Those are that's like sneaky anxiety can be underneath there, right? Like, and I'm not saying that they're all that you think is like having it all together can also have anxiety. And so like don't forget to check on those folks too, like making sure. So those folks are more like quiet, maybe you do like I was thinking like I'd be doing something like when you enter the classroom. I don't know if I should be speaking about classrooms or parents, so I'll say a little of both.
Whatever.
I was thinking about like in the morning time, that transition from home to school, and how sometimes that can be really hard because maybe like, you woke up late and so the kids woke up late, and then it's like chaos and you're just trying to make it in, and like this really hard way of starting the day. If the kids could have a minute to like just write down what they need to leave at the door and even throw it in like an envelope at the door, so then there's like a place for it to just be left and then they can start their day, right? Things like that, which you could even do at home too. and for the externalizing anxiety, you know, that's more like the movement. That's like big stuff, right? So that's the like, hey, let's like be able to like move in our chair or go for a walk or do yoga or those types of things, right? Like getting that out of their body. And if you do it with them, then it's like that's kind of fun too, right? So then like it turns into a silly thing if they're like, Mom, this is weird or whatever, you know. Then if like you're doing it with them, then you're not telling them and you're like doing it together, and then they're like, oh, okay, we're doing this together, then it's not weird or it's like less hard or something. Yeah.
Thank you. So this one is for the panel. What advice would you give to a parent when their child refuses to talk about things that are clearly bothering them? For example, a child says they want to attend a new school but won't elaborate on the reasons why.
Looks like I've got the mic. There's another question specifically for me that is similar to this one. I would say, as a parent, as a therapist, counselor, it's really important to find kids at the right time, and you know your child best. I'm totally guilty of getting in the car with my ECC kids and saying, "What'd you eat for lunch today? And did you feel connected on the playground?" And I just want to know because I'm a mom and I've been away from them all day. But I know before the words come out of my mouth, that's like the worst time to ask why. They're just glad they survived the school day. There's a lot of great parts and some hard parts, and that they're just overstimulated, and it's just not the best time to ask. They're a little bit shut down at that time. But, you know, after their sport or after dinner when they're a little bit more calm, I've had kids tell me when a good time to talk is, and a lot of especially older kids, middle school and beyond, say before bedtime. So even though they want to do a lot of their own preferred things at that time, they're just calmer. They've had their shower, they've had their bath, they're the most available to maybe talk, you know, before it's too late and they're too far gone. But just knowing your child and when they're going to be able to receive care in a conversation is really important. I hope I didn't go off track with this question and go back to my original question that was asked of me. But will you repeat the question so I don't forget anything?
What advice would you give to a parent when their child refuses to talk about things that are clearly bothering them? For example, a child says they want to attend a new school but won't elaborate on the reasons why.
Yeah, so some other ideas might be like taking a walk after school or just like creating space that's like calm, but there's some movement, because it can be intimidating in real face to face counseling when you're just staring at each other and you're putting all that pressure on someone to have that back and forth dialogue. And even as parents, we play counselor too, whether we're therapists or not. And, you know, taking a little bit of the distraction and the heaviness off the question and maybe doing something hands on or finding a preferred activity that they like and maybe being one on one with them and leaving your other two at home with whoever else can be, I think, the best time to connect with them about things that you know need to be tapped into, but they're really shut down about.
All right, thank you. Melissa, how can we help create safe environments of trust and respect at home and model that for our children?
I thought this was a great question. Something about this question that we first need to realize is that a safe space for us isn't a safe space for others. So just because we put something in place that we feel safe in doesn't mean that's what somebody else needs. And so that's the first thing to remember. I think the second thing to remember is that we're going to have to always have this safe space in order to get, and we're going to have this trust kind of already built up. So some things that I always suggest to families and things that we do in the studio is that you get to show up any way that you get to show up. And that doesn't mean that you can destroy things, because boundaries are important in a safe space. But it does mean that I'm not going to judge you for how you show up and what you bring to the table. I'm going to love you no matter what happens and what's presented in front of us, and we're going to work through it. Boundaries is important. So it's something that we're going to talk about. What are the boundaries? What are the expectations? Kids thrive off of boundaries and expectations because they know what to expect. It also goes both ways. I get to have boundaries and expectations, and so do you as the kid. And if your boundaries and expectations aren't met or violated, let's talk through that, because I also may have to apologize to make sure there's a safe space too. So I think that working on these, and the big one, working on our own things that trigger us, our own anxieties, that's going to be really key to being able to implement these other things. If I have no idea how to set boundaries, then I'm not going to be able to create a safe space with boundaries because I'm not there yet. I haven't worked through that. If when you are screaming at me, it reminds me of the time that somebody screamed at me for something else and I broke down, I'm just going to break down in that moment. So taking care of ourselves and working through our own things are going to be really important for creating safety and trust.
Thank you. This one is for the whole group. What would be some good mental health check-in questions for our kids? I'll say that again. What would be some good mental health check-in questions for our kids? Any advice for when to check in and how to reassure them when they are in a safe environment to share?
This is so distracting. I have ADHD and my medicine's all worn off now. Yay. So good check-in questions, open-ended questions, being empathetic, being aware of your own stuff that you bring to the conversation, timing. If they're hungry, might not be the best time, but maybe trying to create like, hey, let's go for a short walk after dinner or this evening. Sometimes devices like phones and iPads and stuff, which they're connecting with their friends and they're wanting to hang out with their friends, even though they're still in your house and not around their friends, they're on their devices to do that. They don't necessarily feel like they can peel themselves away from that, but they may not ever feel like they can peel themselves away from that. So trying to have those consistent boundaries and setting aside time where you disconnect on purpose. And it sort of doesn't have to be, now we have serious talk time. You tell me what's really going on, kiddo. But hey, let's go for a walk. We don't even have to talk about anything. I just want to spend some time with you without our phones. I'm leaving my phone at home too. Again, kind of leading by example. There's open-ended questions, not just, so how was school today? I think probably 90% of kids hate that question. But it's not that they don't want to talk about it. It's they just don't want to think about school and they're hungry or they're wanting to do anything else but think about or talk about school. But trying to just kind of connect with them. How are things going? Looked like you were having a hard time there yesterday or earlier this evening. Or I don't know. Yes. Anyone else have things
Any
to add to
add-on?
that?
I was just going to add a few that I might use in a clinical setting, and I don't think they're by any means out of reach for parents. I would use them as a parent too. So these are just kind of random out of all the things we could ask. I think thinking back to like conscious discipline philosophies and what MRH was really built on and likely still is, asking a child, do you feel safe at school? Do you feel connected? What's your stress level at, between a 0 to 5? I want to manage it as a mom and kind of see at the beginning of the school year, is it a 0? And at the end, it's a 5, just kind of having a little bit of a measure. What helps you feel calm? Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling depressed? Do you feel like, so sad you could hurt yourself? And not being afraid of those questions, especially when you look at what the second leading cause of death is for children 10 and older, 10 to 34 actually. Just not being afraid of those conversations, because we'd always want to know what's going on in a child's brain and heart, rather than not know. And you're never going to give your child an idea to hurt themselves. It's innately in us that we could know to do that. And they're growing up in this world where they're going to hear that word thrown around. And so to give them good education about it and to know that we can get them support when they need it. And most importantly, to know that a child should never have heavy thoughts like that and feel like they have to carry it themselves. If there's like anything you take away from tonight, just knowing that your child should never have to carry that by themselves, but we have to kind of verbalize to them that we're there to help carry it too.
One other thing I'd like to add. Wanted to say, like, sometimes when we hear that our kid's not doing well or they're like, I want to move schools, back to that question, you're thinking all kinds of things like, are you being bullied? Did someone hurt you? What's happened? Please tell me, I need to know. Because we start to get worried or we start to get angry because it brings up stuff for us. Like someone mentioned, like I think you mentioned that, yes. Or has anyone here had that experience where like your kid gets hurt and your first reaction is to get mad, but you're not mad at them. It's just like, I don't know what it is, but you're mad that it happened. You're worried, you're concerned, but your first response is like, why did you do that? Or something. But you're not, is your leg okay? It looks like it's really hurt. But sometimes we have this react instead of a response. And so reaction is, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. Yes, no, I didn't. To react doesn't require thought. It's sort of automatic, boom, just react. But to respond requires some processing of our own feelings, a little self-scan. It doesn't have to take long, but it's taking a moment to breathe, kind of, okay, I'm feeling really anxious right now. How can I help my child not feel anxious? Or I'm not really mad. Hey, are you okay? Just a little extra moment. There's nothing that says you can't take 3 to 5 seconds to respond.
All right. Thank you, Natalie. Are therapists around that specialize in more neurodiverse autistic kids? How do you seek these out, or what should we look for or ask for?
Sure. So I think this role that you have as a parent of advocating for your child, you can interview therapists. Like you can call up therapists and ask to speak with them. This one's specifically about neurodivergent or autistic kiddos. Like, I mean, you could do obviously the Google search, like, neurodivergent therapist near me or whatever, and then make your list and call them and ask them questions of how they would, what their experience is working with maybe something specific to your kiddo, or ways that they work, and then what I do is, and I work with older kids, so I'm more working with the teens, but what I say to them is, hey, we have this first session together, but that doesn't mean you have to stay with me, right? Like this is your space. This is your place to like do your work. So it might not be here, and that's okay, and like helping them have that voice too. And allowing choice to exist there, and then you get a little bit more buy-in from your kiddo if they can have their voice heard in that space too, and know that oh, okay, yeah, I can say yes or no here. And I know that's kind of scary for a parent when you really want your kiddo to go, but you don't have to stick with that first therapist. And I know that's hard because it's hard to find therapists, and then you're scheduling, and I get all those things. But in the long term, it is totally worth it, because you'll get nowhere if your kiddo doesn't have a relationship with that therapist. Nowhere. And so it's important to kind of like heavy load that front of asking that person almost like an interview for you as the parent, and then allowing your kiddo to ask those questions too.
Thank you.
Sure.
Fit is very important, especially in therapy. You want to make sure that it's a really good fit, and not only the parents feel comfortable, but the children as well, because they're doing most of the work with that person. All right, Amanda, questions. What are some play therapy techniques you use to also be able to use at home, that parents may also be able to use at home?
So in our sessions, we use that dynamic of, other children or teens that are similar age to kind of come together and just show up in a space where they know that other children or teens are going through similar things that they are. And I just use a lot of hands. I ask the parents what the children like, so they're not totally just random in my picking, but to make sure they're age appropriate, and just some hands-on opportunities to take the pressure off. Because I work with homeschooled kids that are homeschooled, private school, public school, lots of MRH kids, and they all show up different. They're all going through similar but different things, and some of them want to talk the whole time, and I have to kind of balance their voice, and others don't say a word the whole time, and it takes me a whole week to realize it's safe to put them on the spot and kind of push them. So I'm kind of figuring that all out. But what I do know works is getting out things that they can use their hands to take the pressure off, because it's intimidating to be in counseling, even if it is fun in a group setting. And I'm talking about friendship bracelets or Legos. It can, if you've been to therapy before, it can be kind of heavy. You know, you've got to do some work and you've got to follow the rules, and you might want to be somewhere else, but it's an important place to be. So I just find using your hands and kind of doing something preferred and fun while connecting with other kids your age, talking about, you know, how to make a new friend in a lunchroom when you don't have anyone to sit with, or how to, you know, handle bully like behavior in a school, or, you know, what to do if you're feeling really depressed, you know, as a 6-year-old. And so just finding preferred activities that your child likes, that they won't feel a lot of pressure and a lot of pushback, just finding those safe opportunities that